Design and architecture define the things we use, the spaces we inhabit, and the ways we see the world. Things, Spaces, Interactions presents key works from the M+ collections that inspire us to look closely at the objects and spaces we interact with every day. This exhibition examines how developments in design and architecture across Asia are intertwined with shifts in the region's economics, politics, and culture in the 20th and 21st centuries. The first section of the exhibition is called Hong Kong as Lens. The objects on view here exemplify how M+'s design and architecture collections have been defined by the unique culture of the museum's home city. Design is shaped by the flow of ideas and objects across borders, and Hong Kong has long facilitated this exchange. There is a rich history of affinities between works produced in Hong Kong and those created abroad. In particular, the city's urban growth exemplifies the value of both formal and informal approaches to architecture.
Hong Kong is known for its highly efficient urban planning, and so a project like Mei Fu San Shun that was built in the 1960s is really exemplifying that sort of very high-density private housing and state of interconnected blocks. And yet the unplanned is also what is characterizing Hong Kong, and this is shown most famously by the Kowloon Walled City. So even though it was already demolished in the 1980s, it continues to capture our imagination of Hong Kong as something that is perhaps unregulated at the same time thriving. This actually made our team very much interested in the kind of informal architecture and urbanism and the potentials behind it across Asia. So these include projects such as those by architects that are based in Shenzhen called Urbanus, and this model here is actually one of a series of research models that's called Model for Urban Village. And so if you were to see this model, it's really a proposal of how you actually insert but also create linkages as opposed to completely overhauling an existing community. In this way, they're actually proposing a way in which you're able to really keep the existing kind of social as well as spatial fabric of the city. And another project that is a very key for us is by a Mumbai-based research collective called URBS. URBS actually invited local contractors to actually build models that is meant to be representing how they can improve the existing dwelling structures of the community that is in a slum called the Ravi. At that point, they were really facing the risk of demolition as well as the government wanting to kind of change the entire living environment. And so for them, by having these models and getting them to imagine a new kind of mode of living, new materials, they're actually showing the potential of these local craftsmen as well as builders to be able to improve their own living environments. These two projects for us are very key in really showing the collective intelligence as well as the hidden logic behind informal, urban, as well as architectural communities in such a way that would be giving a very alternative model to urban renewal as well as demolition.
The next section of the exhibition, Designing for a National Identity, explores the roles played by architects and designers in 20th century nation building. Following the Second World War, many countries in Asia gained independence from colonial powers. The aspirations of these new nations were reflected in architecture and urban planning, as well as graphic, product, and furniture design. Through experimentation with form, construction materials, and building technology, architects sought to project a modern, internationalist image while responding to each country's unique cultural, historical, and climatic conditions.
In the 1950s to the 1960s, architects employed a very sharply defined form of geometry, as well as new use of materials, especially concrete, in order to mark a very visible break in terms of the kind of buildings that were designed post-independence era with those that are of the colonial past. This ventilation shutter here is often used in many buildings in Chandigarh, and this one is from the High Court. It was meant to deflect sunlight as well as to regulate airflow. The design of this ventilation shutter therefore reflects a formal and technological response by architects in designing for the humid tropical climate of post-colonial South and Southeast Asia. In Cambodia, you'll find a similar strategy of being sensitive to the climate as well as the history of the region. And this is shown in the design of the National Sports Complex by the state architect as well as the head of public works, Van Molivan. Built on a former marsh, Van Molivan actually made this stadium be designed according to the hydraulic system of the historic Angkor Wat Temple complex as a solution to water drainage. In the entire sports complex, you will see Van Molivan's integration of moats as well as perforation on the walls and the stadium seating, all of which would provide cooling, natural lighting, and cross-ventilation.
Design also helped spread various political and nationalist ideologies. Propaganda could encompass printed matter as well as a wide range of products. Designers often employed imagery associated with folk culture and historical motifs to cement modern national identities. Even under the political constraints of state messaging, creativity and individual expression could thrive. Economic development, technological innovations, and expanded trade networks led to product innovations around Asia. Exemplified by consumer electronics and furniture in Japan, the plastic industry in Hong Kong, and textile production in Thailand. The wide circulation of these goods put Asia on the map of global trade, manufacturing, and design.
This case shows unique example of Thai textile design development during the Cold War era. As a part of propaganda against the communism, the United States supported the development of local craft industries in Thailand and also spreading the idea of the free world. It is the late 1940s, American entrepreneur Jim Thompson came to Bangkok and rejuvenated the declining Thai silk production. And the very bright scarves here you see, those are all hand woven by the Muslim weavers. The scarf has a little tag and the weaver's names on it. Without hesitation, Jim Thompson introduced the Swiss chemical dye to achieve this very bright color palette and then also this unusual color combination. Until then, the natural dye was more popular in Thailand, but people didn't like it as the color comes off from their hands and legs, so they loved this new vivid fixed color and became immediate fashion and also became very popular souvenir from Bangkok. So what we associate today, typical Thai textile, this bright color, it's actually come from such interesting historical background. This dress was designed by a female Afro-American designer, Jacqueline Branford Ayer. Ayer was a fashion illustrator working for Vogue in Paris and New York, and in mid-50s she has moved to Bangkok. And she met Jim Thompson and he encouraged her to start her own fashion business and secure the funding from Rockefellers. So she started Design Thai, first ever ready-to-wear garment brand in Thailand. It's made an immediate hit and also changed the fashion industry in Thailand. The Ayer designed the printed patterns. Those are silk screen printed, and the motif she was referencing from traditional motifs, and then also the natural world and the color of Thailand. So here you see this dress has a lotus flower motifs. She got the inspiration from the temple paintings. Design Thai dress was very elegant, but it's also very well tailored, as a lot of the local tailor business was big in Thailand then. And here it's interesting, the beautiful detail was very wadded belt and the neckline in the same fabric. The garments was exported internationally and gained the popularity at the American high-end department stores.
The architects and urbanist visionaries featured in this section of the exhibition reimagined what cities could be and how people could thrive in them. The London-based group Archigram envisioned radical modes of architecture adapted to the profound social and technological changes of the 1960s. This presentation establishes a dialogue between Archigram's work and influential built and unbuilt projects proposed in Asia, from works by groups such as the Metabolist Architects in Japan to more recent practices like Ma Yan-song, Mad Architects in China. Drawing Architecture Studio created this mural as a visual interpretation of such a dialogue between past and future. Commissioned by M+, the mural depicts a high-density spectacle of movable, modular, and plugged-in structures. If you look closely, you can see projects by Archigram and like-minded architects, as well as similarly adaptive and expandable urban phenomenon across Asia.
This large triangular panel is a building fragments from Expo Tower cabin from 1970 World Exposition held in Osaka, and designed by Japanese architect Kikutake Kiyonori, who was one of the founding members of the Metabolism movement. So the Expo 70 was a mega event to showcase techno-futuristic future to meet the needs of emerging post-industrial societies. And many of the architecture experiment was realized. This Expo Tower was 127 meters and it was the tallest. And then the visitors can see the entire site through these round windows. The tower was designed based on the Metabolism idea of the regenerating architecture. So it was a 7-geodesic cabin was a kind of glowing around the tall vertical truss tower, and with a high-speed elevator took the audience up to the cabin. And then this 54 of this panel make the cabin. And whether the Expo's idea and the metabolism theory was realized in reality or not, but this Expo Tower, one of the very few built structure based on that idea. And it has been functioning until 1990 as an attraction and also an antennas. After the demolition, this panel was kept by the architect Kikutake until M+ was acquired. In this exhibition, we particularly placed this panel in this gallery with the window, which have a Hong Kong skyline view to have a dialogue to reimagine our future cities.
One of the most captivating building types conceived by visionary architects is the megastructure. Massive, interconnected buildings that house multiple functions, these structures are veritable cities in themselves. Built projects like the Golden Mile complex in Singapore and unbuilt ones like Buckminster Fuller's Floating City and Warha's Permeable Lattice City exemplify how megastructures can offer solutions to challenges associated with population density and climate change. Not all architects and designers aimed primarily to solve major social problems through their work. This section, Anything Goes, Postmodern Design, surveys an explosion of decorative surfaces, historical motifs, subjective individualism, and aesthetic contradictions. Postmodern designers and architects consciously went beyond the agenda of technological progress and functionalism and freely experimented with pluralistic imagery and techniques. Works such as those by Japanese designer Kuramata Shiro, a key member of Milan-based Memphis Group, demonstrate how postmodern design could be wholly transnational, yet simultaneously culturally specific. Kuramata's imaginative materials and innovative craftsmanship can be experienced in the Kiyotomo Sushi Bar, a rare, wholly preserved restaurant interior at the height of Japan's bubble economy, first built in Tokyo and then reinstalled at M+.
This group of works shows example how M+ shed the light on the lesser-known figures and their practices. So this group of works are designed by Japanese designer Ohashi Teruaki. He was active since 60s and defined very distinct design language. But unfortunately, his premature death in 1992, and he also designed only bespoke furniture for architects, made him relatively unknown figures outside of his practice and even in Japan. The large sofa, it goes Hannan chair long, designed 1984 for a house designed by Itsuko Hasegawa. And this piece shows a typical Ohashi's interest in drawing different furniture typologies and cultural references. First of all, it's very big as a sofa for a Japanese home, and then it's exaggerated back with a scrolled metal wire and the colorful fabric drawn reference from the Western furniture typologies, while also you see the vintage Indonesian batik and thin layers of mats as an upholstery. That's also reference from the Asian traditional floor seating. Here, it's another piece. It's called Tokyo Mickey Mouse. It's a very whimsical piece. It's affordable picnic mats with their own little serving tray. And I assume he named it so from the shape of the headrest. And inside of the headrest, he using the core of the volleyball, so it's soft and bouncy. In the case shows Ohanshi's drawing and the miniature of the furniture models. Ohanshi was a very skillful drafter as he studied architecture originally. And it was a common way to develop the design process those days, but it looks kind of extraordinary to our eyes today when we design everything by computers.
Seeking new approaches apart from international modernism, designers in Asia reinterpreted regional traditions to rejuvenate age-old craftsmanship. They sought contemporary value in traditional archetypes, mythologies, and philosophies. At the same time, postmodern design in Asia also expressed the playful exuberance of consumer culture. The retail and entertainment industries in cities like Tokyo and Hong Kong produced electronic products with high styling and similarly flamboyant graphics created with novel techniques.
To highlight the playful, exuberant, and highly transcultural nature of graphic output in the postmodern era, especially in the 70s and 80s, we have put together these works that are from Jakarta, from Tokyo, as well as Hong Kong together because of its similarity in the use of the airbrush medium. And the airbrush was a very popular medium for illustration because of its hyperreal as well as very expressive effect. In these three works, you could really tell the powerful medium of airbrush in depicting the empowered and multidimensional female figure. So the first work by Yamaguchi Harumi, she's a female illustrator. Her original artwork here is actually meant to be for a poster for Parco department store in Tokyo. And you could tell that the woman here is really kind of confident and self-assured in her stance, but also in her look towards the audience. And of course, this poster itself exudes this sort of superstar kind of a glamour effect on the viewer. The next work here is Alan Chan's commissioned artwork by Wong Kin Ho for the album design of Anita Mui's 1984 Leap the Stage album. Anita here is being depicted as someone who really, again, confidently struts out in a jumpsuit, and her environment happens to be surrounded by these interstellar objects. And you could tell again from the highly contrasting neon colors that she's meant to be in this world, again, hyper-real, at the same time also kind of superhuman in that sense. And then the next work here is by Cahyono Abdi. It's a Jakarta-based, very key graphic designer. And this is meant to be a poster for the Graphic Design Society in Indonesia. There's a special ode to the airbrush technique because it's actually depicted in his poster right here of almost a woman, but at the same time also a very androgynous figure that is this completely embodying this transcultural mix. So you could tell that she's wearing this wayang dance headgear, but at the same time also a glam rock hairdo and a bow tie.
M+ is a museum of visual culture. Exhibitions here make connections between different disciplines and mediums. Artist Chow Fei's work, RMB City, is featured in this architecture and design exhibition to highlight shared questions about how digital and physical worlds intersect. RMB City was a virtual metropolis built on the multiplayer web platform Second Life. It was launched during the pre-2008 Beijing Olympics building boom. The room presents the work's comprehensive archive for the first time. RMB City is part of the last section of this exhibition, which poses 5 contemporary questions about design and architecture today. Where does the hand end and the machine begin? Manufacturing technologies such as rapid prototyping, 3D printing, and design by algorithm are changing the role of the designer. Where is the need? Many of these projects were initiated by designers to serve unmet needs by leveraging community resources. Who is the author? Design production has become increasingly complex and layered amid difficult social challenges. Authorship can be shared by multiple contributors, some of them anonymous. Where is nature? These works consider humanity's fraught relationship with nature, which simultaneously involves stewardship, recreation, and exploitation. How do we interact? Digital technologies have transformed how we interact, simultaneously enabling us to communicate as never before, while creating new barriers to understanding each other.
So what you see here is 165, the first emoji sketches. Emoji was born digital, so the original is in a picto-digital file. So what you see here is the print out for this exhibition purpose. Emoji was launched in 1999 by Japanese telecommunication company NTT Docomo. Docomo's developer, Krita Shigetaka, he defined this graphic pictogram system, emoji, and he defined which picture to be depicted. And he asked Japanese architect Jun Aoki to design individual characters. So as you see here, so it was limited in 12 by 12 pixels, the grid system. And the interesting part the Krita have referenced, it's a graphic novel system from manga culture, such as like a sweat or the stress or the sleep or epiphany. Here is the first mobile phone. Emoji was installed, Fujitsu Digital Mover. The screen is very small and then it's fit only the 6 line by 8 characters. So the emoji was immediately filling the gap to saving some words, but the especially important part was expressing emotion, such as love, or say sorry, or being sad or angry, which may have been very difficult to say otherwise straight. Emoji became a norm of the Japanese digital communication since the millennium, but it took a decade until it became global. 2011, Apple iPhone 5 was the first phone installed the emoji outside of the country, but have to wait until 2014's Emoji 8 update. Then emoji became a default setting. Then it became become very quickly for the worldwide use. Here we created this emoji video to show the evolution of emoji. So as emoji became the part of global language, so the needs of the including and the referencing, such as cultural diversity, sexual orientations, and the inclusivity become essential topic for the emoji development of today.
How do the images, objects, and buildings you encounter in this gallery enable you to discover or question the experience of the physical and virtual worlds? How do the histories of the works on view help you to see the interconnections between Hong Kong, Asia, and the world?